What hidden truth did you uncover about your spouse that left you utterly stunned? My husband had been secretly inviting another guy to our house during my work hours and keeping it from me entirely. Everything began several weeks back when I spotted a bunch of lengthy hair strands clinging to the bathroom wall close to the shower area. It felt extremely peculiar right away, since my husband is basically bald, and I keep my own hair cut very short and close-cropped. There was simply no way those strands could have come from either of us. Bewildered, I rinsed them off, yet the discovery kept nagging at my mind. I chose not to bring it up, but I stayed alert for any more signs. A clear routine emerged. The hairs only showed up whenever I was stuck at the office or gone for a long stretch. I started feeling like I was losing my grip, and desperately avoided assuming my husband was having an affair with some woman who had flowing locks. When I questioned him casually about the hairs, he merely gave a casual shrug. His laid-back response only heightened my anxiety, because anyone would expect such an unusual find to spark at least some curiosity. I began suspecting he was brushing it off deliberately to prevent me from digging deeper. The issue resurfaced just 2 days earlier, so I challenged him again. He waved it aside once more, but conceded it did seem odd, though he stubbornly claimed the hairs had to be mine somehow. I was certain they weren't, and these days he simply tunes me out whenever I raise the topic. I hated the idea of wrongly suspecting him of infidelity over what might sound like a trivial thing, but the mystery was tormenting me, especially with him acting like it was no big deal. Eventually, I ruled out installing a hidden camera, strangely enough, because I refused to violate his trust in that way. Instead, I opted to slip away from the office ahead of schedule, a first for me. My manager was fine with me taking off midway through the shift. When I got back to the house, everything appeared completely normal at first glance. I had braced myself to spot an unfamiliar vehicle in the driveway or along the curb, but nothing was there. Letting myself in as quietly as possible, confusion hit me instantly. Right in the entryway sat a pair of shoes that weren't familiar to me, and they clearly belonged to a man. Frozen in place, debating whether to creep around silently or announce myself, I was caught off guard when my husband emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 steaming mugs of tea. His face showed just as much shock as mine upon seeing me there. Pretending innocence, I asked how he'd magically known I'd be home early and prepared tea for me. I braced for a fib, but instead he guided me to sit and opened up about the whole situation. Early in the pandemic lockdown, one of his friends, someone I barely knew since we'd crossed paths only once, had been kicked out of his place, become unemployed, and was bouncing between couches. For the last few weeks, this friend had been quietly coming by our home, with my husband's permission, just to shower and get cleaned up before heading to job interviews. He'd even been borrowing my husband's dress shirts and formal outfits. As it turned out, this friend sported long hair plus a full beard. My husband hadn't been unfaithful at all. He'd simply been hiding the fact that his long-haired buddy was dropping in to use our bathroom facilities. The relief that washed over me was immense. He wasn't betraying me. Once the friend finished showering, I finally met him properly. His name was Dave, and he struck me as a genuinely kind person who just hit a rough patch in life. I wished him luck with his upcoming virtual interview, keeping distance, of course, and he left shortly after. I turned to my husband and asked why on earth he hadn't been upfront with me from the start. I would have been perfectly okay with helping out. He admitted he'd been nervous about how I'd respond, worried I might dislike his friend or disapprove of the arrangement. Plus, Dave felt deeply ashamed of his circumstances and didn't want anyone else finding out he was struggling so much. I confessed that I'd begun seriously wondering if he was seeing someone else, which genuinely shocked him. He'd never even thought about how his secrecy might look from my side while protecting his friend. I told him the entire secrecy charade had been absurd, and I even floated the idea that Dave could stay with us temporarily until he got back on solid ground. Curiously, one of my darkest imaginings had involved some random homeless person secretly camped inside our walls, quietly slipping in to shower. In a way, this was sort of close to that nightmare, yet I felt grateful it was only a familiar acquaintance, not some total stranger or an unwanted intruder hiding in the house.